topic number 2. Moving on now to topic number 3, we're sticking with F1, and what we have for this topic is FIA ARE MIA. You know, you've been mentioning, Brandon, how inconsistent some of the rulings have been from the stewards, from the FIA. They're nowhere to be found on some of this stuff. So, you know, you kind of gave a little bit of your take just now about, you know, what's going on with F1 and the rules and regulations. But what do you think the FIA's role in this has been?
Well, I think this title is very fitting, and it's the FIA is MIA, as in missing in action. Like sometimes you can't even find them. It's like they like slide the curtain back, you know, like the Wizard of Oz there, where you're just like, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Like we're not even here, but we're trying to control everything. And that's exactly what the FIA has done recently. And you nailed it. That's what the main thing is. They're so inconsistent across the board with penalizing drivers on track and off track that this is when it's becoming an issue now. And this is where people are starting to talk about it more now. And specifically here in the Brazilian Grand Prix or the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it, the move that Max Verstappen makes, I believe, is on lap 48 against Lewis Hamilton, basically running him off the track. Mind you, this is not the first time that Max Verstappen has run a competitor off the track or Lewis Hamilton just this season. I'll tell you what, at the beginning of this race, in turn 1, he drives Bottas off the track as well and forces him to have to back out or there's going to be contact. So Max Verstappen, not only does he do it to Lewis Hamilton, he does it to every other driver on the grid. And I've talked about this before. He has no respect for any other driver on the grid. To me, he's like the Kyrie Irving right now of F1. Like he does not give a crap about anybody but himself. And this is showing it even more with the moves he makes. That was a deliberate move on Lewis Hamilton to block him, to send him outside because he knew he was just about to get past going into that corner or was going to be wheel to wheel. He keeps his car right, and I've talked about this even on my Twitter, so you can go look at it. He keeps his car right, deliberately brakes late going into that corner, and then makes no real attempt to turn his wheel to make the apex and make the turn. And you can bring up his onboard from previous laps that show him making that attempt and making the apex there. He just decides he's going to mosey his way out there, drift his way out, late on the brakes, no attempt to turn, and then force Lewis Hamilton to either back out or crash. And if a crash happens, we all know that's going to benefit Max Verstappen because he has the lead in the points right now. Lewis Hamilton has a lot more to lose. He was a lot more calculated there. He has been all season because he knows Max Verstappen's been running him off the track, started in Imola, and it just continued on getting worse and worse. I'd say this is probably the worst of them at all, and maybe going back to Monza when he drops his tire on Lewis Hamilton's head. But I'm telling you what, the FIA said this was no investigation needed. No investigation needed, no penalty needed. That's clean racing. That is not clean racing. Other drivers have come out and said it deserved a penalty. Live on air, the people that were covering the show, Crofty said it deserves a penalty. Everybody going looking at that now, especially with the onboard of Max Verstappen's wheel turning, said that deserved a penalty. But the real thing is the FIA did not even investigate. And so that's the big thing there, where it's just too inconsistent. I guarantee you, if Lewis Hamilton made that move on Max Verstappen, it would have been investigated, and he would have received the 5-second penalty, which is what was deserving for that move. But I'll tell you what, one last thing, why they have such inconsistencies is because they change these stewards every Grand Prix, so you're getting a different guy up there with a different opinion, and he might even be biased to these drivers, I'm telling you, whether it be for Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, because you're getting someone different every week.
From different countries, too.
Consistent. Yeah, different countries all around the world. Make it more consistent. Pick a diversified group of stewards at the beginning of the season and stick with them throughout, and you will get consistent calls.
Yeah, this sort of reminds me of in the NFL with replay, right? Where I've always said, instead of the ref having to go over to the sideline and like look at a monitor and like put the headphones on and put the jacket on and just have somebody in at NFL headquarters in New York looking at all the replays of all the games. They buzz him in. He tells the ref what actually happened, whether the player made a catch or didn't make a catch or stepped out of bounds. Do the same thing for F1. Keep all the stewards in one place for every race, or they can even all be remote and be at their own. You know, if it's a steward from a bunch of different countries or different continents, you have them all be remote. Everybody life has been on Zoom. We can do this in F1, okay? So you put all the stewards in a different location, in a different country. They're all looking, but they're all looking at the same monitors, and then they can look at these things, away from the race, and it can be the same 5, 7, whatever, how many stewards you have, and then they can be more consistent. It just seems like all these rules and the way that they implement the rules, the way that they carry out the rules are just so inconsistent, and they're not clearly defined either. We see this in all sports. I mean, it's not just F1, it's not just the NFL. Baseball's got all the unwritten rules, like, don't slide into this guy, but if you're touching the bag while you're spiking the guy in the family jewels, it's okay. But if you're not touching the bag, it's not okay. It's like, let's put these down on paper or on your iPad, whatever you want to say, and just have it clear and concise so that everybody's on the same page. If you're not allowed to, and I'm not trying to give Verstappen the benefit of the doubt here, but if you're not allowed to touch, a driver's wing, don't let the drivers touch the other wings. Like, just don't let them do it. Don't let them touch it. If you touch it, you have all these onboard cameras. You can tell if a driver touches another driver's wing. Then don't let them do it. And just say, you can't do it. You can't touch. You can look, but you can't touch. And it's just clear and concise. You need more clear and conciseness in F1 rules.
Yeah, and more consistency across the board. If you bring that consistent group, same steward group, and I'm with you. I get it, the whole Zoom thing, but I say bring them around the world. Let them be on site at every Grand Prix. And I'll tell you, they'll enjoy it. Obviously, they get to travel the world, right? They're going to the beautifulest places in the world. So let them be on site, and they can give you a consistent ruling throughout the season. So I've got a ton. We could talk about this all night. But, hey, let's move on to topic number 4 tonight.